Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com, here on Real America's Voice. Breaking news in this hour from Georgia. And we have our correspondents down there in the form of John Fredericks and the John Fredericks Radio Network, Heather Mullins for Real America's Voice. I want to bring you the footage that has just been shown at the hearings with Mayor Giuliani, Jenna Ellis and the rest of the team down there in Georgia. Explosive evidence of something that the left is not going to be able to easily deny. Let's roll the clip.
This back and show it to you. There you go. So now they're going to start pulling these ballots out from under this table. This table, the black one, was placed there by the lady with the blonde braids at about 8:22 a.m. in the morning. So she put that table there. So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the pretense that we're going to stop counting, is the person who put the table there at 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table. Yeah, upper right hand, you see the gentleman in the red. So he just pulled one out. So what are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses? Is the question. So these machines can process about 3,000 ballots an hour. You have multiple machines there, and they're there for 2 hours. So you do the math. How many ballots went through those machines in those 2 hours when there was no one there to supervise, to be present, consistent with your statutes and rules, to supervise the tabulation? We believe that could easily be, and probably is certainly, beyond the margin of victory in this race.
Let's bring in Heather Mullins, who's down in Georgia for Real America's Voice, to discuss this with us. Heather, explosive new footage being revealed in Georgia today. This really does underscore why Trump's supporters, people who wanted real evidence and real court hearings, wanted this done quickly. Because we're fast approaching certification deadlines. We're fast approaching the deadlines for this race to be, officially called us over December the 8th, safe harbor date, 14th, and on. And this evidence is just now coming to light. What are we seeing here?
Well, so we know that the Fulton County, right, where State Farm Arena, where that footage came from. This is Fulton County, the largest county in the state of Georgia. In fact, 10% of the vote came from this county. Now, the election board was asked to send their election director to speak here at 11 o'clock this morning, but the chair in there that's chairing this meeting said that they received notice he was unable to make it. That's Rick Barron, the election director, said he could not make it today because he was reconciling something to do with the ballots for the deadline that they just had to have the rescan for. But who did show up was the Fulton County Board of Commissioners Chair, Rob Pitts, who actually said in his testimony this morning that he gives Fulton County an A+ for how they handled the election, saying nothing went wrong, there was zero evidence, and now we're seeing this video, which according to them in there just came out. So the Secretary of State's office hasn't even had a chance to review it yet, but it is pretty telling when you see that there's these boxes coming out from underneath a table and that these ballots were being scanned in after hours, after allegedly observers were told to go home at approximately 8:30. Now, the other thing is, this same chair, Rob Pitts, said earlier he was not there, but according to the woman that played that video, there's an affidavit from someone stating he was actually there when everybody was told to go home.
So what we're dealing with here is, I think that's 4 suitcases that were secreted under a black cloth, under a table, and that when poll watchers were dismissed, told to leave and told they could leave, and that no more counting would take place, these 4 suitcases, ostensibly full of ballots, were pulled out and counted, Heather?
So that's what they're saying. That's what it appears like. She also did mention that one of those four people, I forget the role she had, but she was there earlier in the day wearing different clothing. And it was the woman with the yellow braids that she said later came back and was one of those four people, but was wearing a different outfit. So I'm not quite sure how the boxes got under there. They said they just got this footage, and in order to properly review it, it's 14 hours long, so they'd have to continue to investigate 14 hours worth of footage before they can give any more clear explanation as to how that box ended up there.
Heather, in your experience, having looked at all of these elections across the country, having watched elections take place before, in everything that we know about elections, is it normal practice to pull out 4 suitcases of ballots from under a table after poll watchers have left the room?
I would say it's not normal practice, and I would say that the Fulton County Election Board should be here answering questions. Rick Barron should be here owning up to Georgians and people that want some answers. But what we're seeing is the people that should be answering the questions are not showing up when asked.
That's absolutely true. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. Heather, we thank you for coming and joining us with an update on the ground. I know you're studying the hearings all day long. You'll be back on Real America's Voice later on today. Thank you again, Heather Mullins from Georgia.
Thank you, Raheem.
All right. Well, you see it with your very own eyes, and look, maybe there's some explanation, but extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And that is some extraordinary evidence that we're seeing. The Election Integrity Project's Ellen Swenson is going to be joining us in the next section of this show to talk about what they're finding in California, in Nevada. We'll ask her if it's normal practice to find suitcases full of ballots. We have the video up at thenationalpulse.com. We're going to be playing it over and over again throughout this show. Maybe there's some credible explanation as to why 4 suitcases were pulled out from under a table and the ballots counted in Georgia after poll watchers have been told they could leave the room, in fact, dismissed. Maybe there is a reasonable explanation. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it really quickly because what's going on down in Georgia right now with Republicans at each other's throats and establishment Republicans not wanting to keep this fight up, well, this should galvanize every single person out there who had any semblance of doubt that there is at the very least, we should not be declaring this race over. I won't. Not until all of these claims have been fully investigated. And as days go on and days go by, more and more and more evidence comes out. More and more statistical analyses show just how weird, anomalous this election was. You heard from Patrick Basham yesterday from the Democracy Institute here on this show. They got 2016 bang on, their polling, bang on. And he said, hey, look, if there was this kind of swing to Biden that nobody thought was going to happen, but it happened, it would have happened in a far more uniform manner than just in the places that he really needed to, bang in the middle of the night. I want to bring Ellen Swenson on here from the Election Integrity Project. That's not the Transition Integrity Project. I have to say that every time now because Rosa Brooks and Niels Gilman kind of tried to steal your name, Ellen, but you guys have been doing amazing work for years and years and years, well before those charlatans came along. The Election Integrity Project focusing in on Nevada and California. But just before we get to the latest from you guys, I want to ask you, you've been doing this for a while now, studying elections, you know them inside out, how they work. In your life, in your career, have you ever seen it? Is it normal to find ballots stuffed in suitcases, pulled out from under a table, and counted after poll watchers have left the room?
Well, it shouldn't be normal, but unfortunately, we also heard that story, I think it was in New York, just that suddenly these ballots appear. What I think has been going on is sort of this manufactured chaos. You throw ballots out there willy-nilly, you don't have a clean list. And then, lo and behold, if something does show up, it's more plausible, because it's such a mess. Versus if we treated our ballots like they should be, which would be like, I call it gold in Fort Knox, this wouldn't be allowed. Suddenly you wouldn't have a box of ballots or a suitcase of ballots there because they would all be accounted for, locked up, and secured. But we're not treating them. We're treating them, well, way less than gold, certainly.
Well, they put them in on the back of lorries or trucks, as you call them. They put them, in the street. These gaylords that are in the street that you just pop your piece of paper into. They're sent in the mail. They don't have the security envelopes in them. They're stored in warehouses, stored in the back of cars. This is not treated. I mean, the left is constantly telling us how important democracy is, how we should guard it with our lives. I'm more of the Constitution should be guarded with your life, and the Republic should be guarded with your life. Democracy is a form of voting, right? Democracy is it's not a system of government. It's a method of electing a government. But let's take the left at their word. Democracy is the be-all and end-all. Democracy dies in darkness. Democracy is what it's all about. Defending the vote. So why are you stuffing ballots in suitcases and hiding them underneath tables in unsecure buildings, right? That doesn't make any sense.
It does. And also, as we've seen in California and Nevada, they've been sending them to people who don't exist, people who died. And so, again, these stray ballots are out there. And then when you don't have what was promised, which was the signature matching, then all bets are off. What was a road to fraud is a superhighway now.
Ellen, so tell us about what you guys have been finding out. More coming out of Nevada, and of course, there's going to be a whole lot more, I believe, taking place in Nevada tomorrow. Another hearing tomorrow, which I'm just getting the news about.
Yes, I've heard that too. I think that's the Republican Party. And I think Trump is going today. I believe my head's in data so much I'm losing track right now.
Well, we're glad that your head is in the data, because somebody's head needs to be. Just before we get back to my question, actually, let me just make a comment on something you said a moment ago that just reoccurred to me. Is you're talking about how everything's everywhere and it's higgledy-piggledy, and that makes the burden of proof so much higher for proving fraud, and that's kind of why they do it, is that the mountain that you have to climb, and that's why I'm glad that your head is buried in the data. You are climbing that mountain every day. So tell us what you're finding along the way.
Okay, so I'm the chief analyst for Election Integrity California, as well as Election Integrity Project Nevada. So we have both sets of data from both states, the entire state, in terms of voter lists and their voting histories and so on. So what we've done is we've merged those two data sets, and we've looked for matching people who are registered in both states. We've used, they have the same phone number, their California mailing address is their Nevada registration address, and then we also have an additional bucket of people who match on name and phone number, birth date only, but they have exceptionally rare names, and so that tells us that's the same person. We have probably over 20,000 of those people, and maybe more actually, who are registered in both states. But what we did is we took a subset and we said how many of those are registered in Nevada and California, but their later registration date is California, indicating that they are actually California residents now. And how many of those voted in the Nevada election? That's our first cut. And so we found 2,410 of those people who voted in the Nevada election on November 3rd, though it appears to us they are California residents and they do not meet the federal or Nevada residency laws to vote in Nevada. So
wow.
We just come out with that yesterday.
Wow. And this is the story. I believe we've got it up in the breaking section at the National Pulse. I think Natalie Winters popped it up late last night. So what? Just remind the audience, what's the difference in Nevada between Trump and Biden?
I don't know. I know it's a relatively small number. I don't know. Again, I mix the states up because I'm so involved in the data right now that I need to focus on. But it's small enough that they're trying to fight it.
I think it's about. I think it's about 40,000, isn't it? It's about 40,000. Does that sound about right to you?
Possibly. The 2,400 is not going to change the result.
Yeah.
We've submitted it to the Trump campaign, and so we don't know what'll happen. But
Ellen, hang on. We've got to go to a break. Let's come back. We'll reset, and you can tell us more about that. We'll be right back after this break.
Right.
So the point is there's about a 40,000 vote gap in Nevada. And while what we're talking about here with Ellen Swenson from the Election Integrity Project wouldn't be enough to flip that in and of itself, the point is if a rudimentary, I don't want to call their work rudimentary, but compared with like a forensic, full-on federal AG Barr investigation into all of this stuff, if you could find 2,500 things that don't make sense in this, pull in extra resources, start looking at these things, dedicate the right resources to it, you might find that that's pretty easily overturned, in fact, and we don't even know. I mean, look, let me read you something before we bring Ellen back in here. So there's this new mail-in voter survey that was recently conducted in Nevada. A survey done by Basilich and Associates of mail-in voters only. And there's two stunning data points that come out of this. Number one, 1% of those people who were surveyed didn't think that they had voted. Now remember, we're not 6 months after the election here. We're not 6 years after. I mean, faulty recall is a thing that people have to pollsters and surveyors, they bear in mind, but not this close after an election. You don't mail a ballot 6, 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, maybe, and they go, yeah, did I? I don't know. I don't think I did. No, you would remember doing that, especially given that this election is on everybody's television screens, computer screens, cell phone screens, every single day. It's at the top of a lot of people's minds, and it should be. So you get 1%, that's between 3,000 and 7,000 votes there in and of itself, right? And then you've got 2% who told the pollsters that they didn't receive a ballot in the mail at all. But these are the people who were registered as mail-in ballots and whose ballots were counted. So, Ellen, those are, 1 and 2% doesn't sound like a lot. But when the margin's 40,000 and the numbers are big enough, that actually suddenly does become enough.
Yep. So all these things add up, I think. There's what we're finding and then what other people are finding, all those adding up. And then, like you said, a more in-depth investigation could expose a lot more. What we're going to do next is we have this group of at least 20,000 people we believe are registered in both states. So we're going to next look at the people who appear to be living in Nevada now who voted in California, because we have California data we just got in. And then we're also going to be looking at if anybody voted in both states, and that's definitely a felony. And we will be, submitting that to law enforcement if we find that. So and we're being conservative. There's a lot more that we leave on the table, but common names, for example, we don't have enough information to prove that that's the same person because it's a common name and it could be a coincidence.
Right.
So we don't report those. But if with further research by the actual election officials, you would probably find a lot more.
Right. Ellen, anything more we should know? And especially I want to make sure that you give the website so that people can help out, donate. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's important that we're all focused on the presidential, but these issues affect the down ballot. So right now there's a Senate District 6 out of Clark County, a state Senate, that it's only 600 votes apart. Yeah. And in terms of the final result, but we have 124 of these cross-state voters who voted in that district, and so that's very close and could be turned over with some further research.
Ellen, the website for the Election Integrity Project?
Yeah, it's EIP-ca.com.
All right, and thank you so much, not just for your time today, but for all the hard work that you guys are doing. I understand that, I am not a mathematics person. My maths teacher at school often used to lament the fact that I would distract the rest of the class because I just couldn't pay attention to what was going on on the blackboard. And I'm so grateful there are people like you out there who can bear to go through some of this stuff, because I found it incredibly difficult over the last couple of weeks. So thank you, Ellen, for everything that you and the Election Integrity Project doing. Thank you. Have a good day. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to be able to take you to the hearings live to show you what's being said in Georgia. I wonder if we can take that feed live to you. I think we can. I think we're prepping it right now. So stick around, stay tuned. We're going to bring you that. We're going to have John Fredericks, who's live in Georgia, joining us later on in the show as well. We're going to keep talking about this footage that has come out of these ballots that were secreted, hidden, stashed in suitcases underneath tables in the Staples Center and brought out after the people had left the counting room. Let's take you live to the audio and the video from the Georgia hearing right now.
Ballots before I put them in this suitcase that's just in the middle of the room. And she kind of questioned, and then I went over one day and I pulled out a stack of ballots out of that case that was unattended, that was 8 inches high. So throughout the day, I put them next to me and I just started tearing them because I could tear more than mark each one through and spoil the ballots. The next day, the girl who was over me, she came to me and she said that she spoke to the head Dominion girl and that what I was doing was correct, that they were way too loose with the ballots in the warehouse. But there was no directive for anybody else to spoil ballots. And I never went back in the suitcase and pulled out extra ballots. Then on Friday, when early voting concluded, I was just working at my little station, and some other tech poll workers that were trained like me came up and said, "Bridget, you're a manager, is this correct?" And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, they're just pulling out ballots. And they had brought all the tabulator scanners out from State Farm Arena and wheeled them in the warehouse. And I guess I should back up. The warehouse was run by Dominion people because the Fulton County employees had a COVID outbreak. So they were all quarantined, 24 of them. So this was all run by Dominion software people. And I realized they probably have never worked an election and they don't know the security and the preciousness of a ballot, of someone's vote. So I went over to look at the situation with the coworkers, and I was quickly reprimanded and told, "Bridget, it's fine. We've been doing this all week." And I didn't know what to say because I had no authority. I was bothered by it, and I told the poll workers, I'm like, well, you know, the media card's what's really important. The paper ballots are just backups. So
all right,
it'll
quick
be okay.
break. We'll be back with more from the hearing here on Real America's Voice. Stick around, stay tuned, important stuff. Okay, welcome back to the National Pulse. I want to take you back into the room in Georgia where the hearings continue to take place. We'll have John Fredericks joining us in just a moment. Stick around and stay tuned for that. In the meantime, back to the room in Georgia.
Consultant guy who was printing ballots, I look over and I notice he's printing random ballots. I'm like, there's an order when you print test ballots. The purpose of a test ballot is so that you can vote for each candidate. So you either start from the top and vote for the first person all the way across, and then the second person, etc. This guy was just printing random ballots. And so I went over and instructed him, hey, you know, to print test ballots, you got to do it this way. And he's like, oh, do I have to vote for Trump? I'm like, yeah, you got to vote for Trump. And then he started printing some ballots, and then he said he had to leave, so he left. And it was 10 o'clock at night, so I just finished up printing that batch of test ballots, ran it over to the person, and then I left. So then I'm also a precinct manager. So I manage the precinct and I'm concerned over the emergency ballots. You guys passed a law that 10% of every voter in the poll book, you have to have an emergency ballot. Well, in my precinct, I got yellow sample ballots. They were on yellow cheap paper, said sample across them. So I got 250 of these. So I called the warehouse. I said, where are my emergency ballots? I mean, I hope I don't need them, but where are they? And I took a picture, sent them a picture, and they're like, yeah, that's not right. And we don't know where they are. We can't find them. And in my training as a manager, I've never been trained the importance of securing the emergency ballots. When I've gone into the check-in center at the end of the night, there's no accountability. In the June election, they didn't even have forms when they checked us in. They didn't have ballot recap sheets, which is the most important thing you need as well. But they didn't have check-in forms to say, hey, you turned in all your provisional ballots that were unused. You turned in all your emergency ballots. There's no checking. The next election, you think, okay, that was the first time we used the system. Maybe they'll get it right. So the second time I went to check in, they had the old check-in forms with old language, DREs. And I'm like, okay, I'll sign off, but here's all my emergency ballots. Here's all my unused provisional ballots. So you think the third time they would get a form. I go to check in that night. They don't have forms. The girl at the Roswell check-in center said she just made one up. But there was nowhere on there to say Bridget had 250 emergency ballots, and she's turned in those ballots. There's nowhere to say that my provisional ballots, I'm a split precinct, so I did have proper provisional ballots for my B precinct, but none for my A precinct. So that was concerning. And I did write my superior at Fulton County Elections, and she sent it on to her superiors, and I've not heard back about my concerns. I did send it to the Secretary of State. I sent my concerns prior to the election, and they were supposed to forward it on to the correct people. I went back to the Secretary of State after the election with my post-election concerns. I've not heard back from the Secretary of State. I attended the Board of Elections meeting this last week on Monday morning while I was in the airport, and I was going to give my testimony of securing the ballots, and I was muted 15 seconds into my presentation. So I feel like I'm not heard, or it's not a concern. I was also concerned about the Fulton County. Rob Pitts didn't mention to you this morning, but they had ACLU clerks in every single Fulton County location to process absentee ballots. I was concerned because my clerk was not trained. She was trained the day before. She seemed very intelligent. She's a lawyer. She wasn't trained to collect an affidavit if you're clearing an absentee ballot. I was also concerned that she was using her personal laptop, but I guess that's fine to have the whole voter database and who turned in absentee ballots and who didn't on your personal laptop. So those are just some of my concerns. I kind of went around, so I'm sure you have some questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any questions from any of the Senator Heath?
I don't want to jump ahead of any of you smart guys in here.
No risk of that.
You just a lot of information there that could.
I'm sorry.
There was a lot of information there that could certainly cause me concern, but One of the last things you were talking about, these emergency ballots, and you mentioned the absentee ballots. So who all knows, if I request an absentee ballot, who all knows whether or not I have voted that absentee ballot?
In previous years, we would have to call downtown to Fulton County elections, and they would clear a voter to vote on the machines. In this election, there was a lot of snafus because there were so many absentee ballots sent out back in June. So the solution was to put an ACLU absentee clerk in every precinct that would do the job of the Fulton County people, because the phones would jam. And I would have 3 poll workers on the phone calling the 3 different lines, and we would just sit there and let it ring and ring and ring until someone got through. And then we'd clear our line of voters that we had so they could go vote on the machines. But I don't know, maybe that's public information of who has turned in their absentee ballot. It seems like if it was public information, then I would have loved to have been able to look it up myself on my phone.
Do you have any concern that if I knew which available absentee ballots were out there and uncast, that it might be a good opportunity to do whatever with, whether it was call them up and say, hey, you need to go vote today, or
You haven't turned in your ballot? Can I come get it?
Can I come help you, or whatever? Help me with these emergency ballots. Is that what you called them?
Yes, emergency ballots.
So these are legitimate ballots?
Yes, supposedly.
All right, quick break. We'll come back with more from the hearing in Georgia. John Fredericks will join us. Stick around. Let's bring in the oracle of the deplorables. John Fredericks is in Georgia, and he's seeing what we're seeing. He's seeing it sooner. He saw the video that was shown of the suitcases of ballots that came out from under the table and were counted after poll watchers were told that they had to leave the room. I want to make sure that we play that video again so that people at home just tuning in can see. John, thanks for joining us here this afternoon. Is that accurate? Have I portrayed that accurately about the suitcases? You saw it almost before anybody else did.
Raheem, you absolutely displayed it correctly, and quite frankly, all of the fake news and the Democrats and others and many Republicans have been saying nothing to see here, no evidence. Well, you know what we got today right here at the Gold Dome in Atlanta, Georgia? We got a mountain of evidence in a video that the Giuliani lawyer team just got from a FOIA last night. And Raheem, in that video, it clearly shows that after they kicked everybody out and said ballots would be stopped counting after everybody went home and they shut out the lights and put plywood on the windows, the several workers continued to work for 30 minutes like nothing was happening. Then the camera shows they go into another room, they unlock a desk and take out 4 huge black boxes of stuffed with ballots and start feeding them in the machines. Raheem, this is all caught on video. The whole fake news cover-up is about to collapse, Raheem, like a house of cards in a matter of today because they have that video. After that, questions were asked about how those got there. No one seems to have any idea how they got there. But now, in a whistleblower testimony, which is going on right now from Ms. Fromm, she's saying that she was called to the Dominion Warehouse headquarters where they were printing out live ballots, test ballots, and she was told not to spoil them. So those ballots could have easily been distributed back in these black boxes. I mean, the fraud here, Raheem, is right in front of us. I don't know how the fake news now and the other Democrats are going to hide this and continue their charade with the Joe Biden fantasy cabinet. I mean, this thing is unraveling, Raheem, before our very eyes.
Well, it is. I mean, for you and I, and for the audience, for the majority of the audience at home, I think that's true. For the CNNs, even for the Fox Newses of the world, I wonder if they will even bother to show their audience what we're showing the audience in the screen right next to both you and I right now, this video, this CCTV footage. Now, I can imagine, given what Project Veritas has been showing us about the CNN editorial calls and their outright refusal to deal with things like Hunter Biden's hard drive, saying outright we're not going to cover it. They said obviously we're not going to cover it before they had even investigated it. So we can probably rely on them to do the same with this. Now, let me ask you this question, John, because you said something that was very affirmative. You said, hey, this is unraveling before our eyes right now. Can there be a reasonable explanation for the ballots being under the desk in suitcases and pulled out after people had been told, poll watchers had been told to leave?
I'm sure they'll manufacture one or make up one, but it's just not going to hold any water, Raheem. In fact, which in a laughable exchange, one of the Democratic senators, Senator Parra, questioned the lawyer doing the video and said, well, this has already been debunked. It's already been debunked. And Rudy Giuliani said, well, how can it be debunked? No, I'm sorry, it was Ray Smith said, well, how can you debunk something? It came out last night. We didn't get it until 10 p.m. So how can you debunk something that this is the first time that anybody saw it? But see, this is what their talking points are, and they got caught in it. It's already been debunked. We've already talked about that. It's already been dismissed. It's already been investigated. We already had the recount. The election is fair. A+. That's their talking points. They're still saying it when they just saw the tape, so nothing got debunked. The Democrats here don't really know what to do. If you're in this hearing watching them, they're panic-stricken because they know the whole thing that they've done here is about to collapse.
Is that,
now, you just heard, too,
John, is that true?
from 20-some-odd-year veteran poll watcher Susie Voiles.
Yeah.
Very credible lady, been doing this forever. She said she comes across a batch of ballots, 110 of them. There's supposed to be 110 too many. They're pristine. They're on different paper. They're not folded. How do you have a non-folded ballot and then they're all for Biden and they've got a watermark on it, that they're all the same?
That's extraordinary. John, you're seeing this now taking place live in Georgia. Do you know, are there any indications of what the next steps are after this?
Well, I think there has to be two things have to happen. And it ties into January 5th. Number
John,
one,
is the lady who was just testifying right behind you? Is that her right behind you to your left?
yes.
I don't know if you can pull her over. I don't know if you can pull her over for a quick chat. Let's just take John in full screen and see if she can.
Let me see if I can get her.
Yeah.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. Go and see if you can get her. We'll try and break some news here live right now on air with John Fredericks down in Georgia. We're live on Real America's Voice. I wonder if we can even blow this break just so we can get this lady on air here with us, ladies and gentlemen.
Bridget Thorne.
Okay, make sure she gets the microphone in front of her as well.
Bridget Thorne with us, Raheem.
Go ahead.
Miss Thorne is with us, and she just got through with her whistleblower testimony. Miss Thorne, thank you for coming on today with us at Real America's Voice. Can you just give us a synopsis when you were talking about these test ballots being printed and not secured? And the management of Dominion was telling their employees not to secure the ballots. These were live ballots. Why did they do that? And what do you think happened to those?
Honestly, I don't know after we printed the test ballots whatever happened to them. I think I thought it would be a directive that we needed to rip up the ballots. I've made a recommendation that test ballots should be printed on not official paper, but no one's listened to my concern yet.
All right, John,
so
we have to go to a break.
Giving a testimony
John,
here.
you continue talking to
All right, thank you, Raheem. Mrs. Thorne, thank you.
We'll come back very shortly. We'll talk to you again. Thank you. Well, one of the best things about having correspondents on the ground and doing live television is sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. And we're very grateful for the lady who's just given testimony down in Georgia, out there with John Fredericks. John, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Raheem. We're with whistleblower Bridget Thorne from Alpharetta, Georgia. By the way, that's where the rally was held yesterday with Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell in Alpharetta, Georgia. And Bridget Thorne, whistleblower, just got through her testimony in the Senate hearing here at the Atlanta General Assembly in the General Oversight Committee. Mrs. Thorne, thank you for being with us. If I could just ask you a few questions, if you could just come up here a little
Sure.
bit. So, yeah, just a little bit more. Thank you.
Bridget,
Let's start with this. When your immediate concern was that Dominion in Atlanta was printing test ballots that were real ballots on real paper, yet they were not being destroyed. And you said that some of your coworkers were told not to destroy them. What happened to those?
Oh, I have no idea what happened to the test ballots after they were printed. And it wasn't that they weren't told to destroy them. They were told to put them in a shredder suitcase that was going to go to a shredder to be shredded. But I went through the suitcase one day and pulled out an 8-inch stack of ballots, and I personally spoiled them throughout the day whenever I had a break.
So an 8-inch stack, how many ballots is that?
Let's see, it's probably 3 reams, maybe 750, 800 ballots.
So you don't know at the end of the day how many ballots that they actually produced there that ended up maybe in those 4 boxes, right, that we saw the video of, or maybe that was part of the 96,000 that were unaccounted for. But your testimony said that live ballots were being spewed out of these machines and there was no security to either keep track of them or destroy them, right?
Correct. Or who was printing them? Because I would leave at 10 o'clock at night and I found people printing ballots on the machines late at night.
What would be the reason to do that?
I don't want to accuse anybody of any ill intent, but I don't know.
But was there a legitimate business reason that you would have been printing sample ballots or test ballots, as you say, throughout the middle of the night?
My assumption when I came up on the workers printing ballots was that they had lost a group of test ballots and that they needed reprinted. So I went ahead and reprinted the ballots for them.
We're with Bridget Thorne, whistleblower. Bridget, with all the heat coming down on this, what inspired you to come forward?
I guess I'm frustrated because for 9 years I've really worked hard at trying to make things fair and running a proper election, and I've tried to be involved as much as I could in helping my people, my superiors at Fulton County Elections, and I've reached out to them with my concerns and they've gone unheard. I sent an email to them and to everybody, and nobody seems to be concerned. They said they don't have time right now because they have another election coming up to listen to my concerns. I went to the Board of Elections meeting on Monday, and I was going to read a 2-minute script, and I was muted 15 minutes into my script. I reached out to the Secretary of State with my concerns. I did all the proper channels, and nobody seems to be concerned about what I saw.
In fact, you were censored.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's why you're here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make a change in the system. I don't feel good about working election if I don't think it's being properly run.
Ms. Thorne, do you believe that there was fraud in Georgia in this election based on what you saw and experienced?
I don't have direct evidence, so I can say there was certainly potential for fraud. If anybody wanted to be nefarious, there were ways I could have defrauded the election.
And you've done this for 9 years.
Almost 9 years, correct.
Have you ever experienced anything like you did a month ago on November 3rd over the 9 years that you've done this?
Yes, Fulton County Elections is kind of crazy. The June election was crazy. It took them 6 hours to get me just pigtails to plug in my machines. So I had 8 of my 10 machines go down. They're working on trying to get better, but it's just been a difficult. Fulton County Elections is always difficult.
So it seems like what you're saying, the possibility remains that test ballots were printed out through the day, through the night, not properly destroyed, not properly secured. And you also mentioned in your testimony, one night you went home, there were four suitcases of them, and you came back at 7 a.m. and they were gone.
No, they were a stack of probably 60, 70 suitcases of ballots from early voting that were just in the corner of the warehouse, unattended when I came in that morning. I could have easily walked out of the warehouse with them. I could have easily pulled my car up to the loading dock and loaded a truckload of them. It was just crazily unsecure.
Thank you, Bridget Thorne, for being with us, for your testimony and your courage as a whistleblower to come forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to Raheem.
John Fredericks there in Georgia. What an amazing woman that is, to go up there and say, hey, look, I just want to be able to do my job. I just want these elections to be secure. And to go up there and tell the truth in front of a room full of people who are, obviously there to be skeptical and pick holes in what you're saying. And she didn't want to commit to anything that she didn't think was 100% true. But at the same time, you heard her right there, Bridget Thorne, the whistleblower, who's saying, hey, there is lots of potential for fraud. Maybe she didn't say lots. She said there is potential for fraud. She saw the ballots. She saw the suitcases full of ballots. And she said she could have loaded up her car with them if she wanted to. This is not the way elections are run in first world countries. This is the way banana republics, developing nations, run pseudo-elections that once upon a time the United States, the United Kingdom, NATO members, G8 members, the developed nations in the world, once upon a time would look at a system like that and say, that doesn't count. That's not an election. And now, what do we say? We run a house like that? At the end of the show, stick around. David Brody's up next in the water cooler. See you tomorrow, 3 p.m.
Welcome to the Water Cooler, everybody. I'm David Brody. We are glad you're with us. It's Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. I'm hungry, but that's a separate issue. Anyhow, another day, another hearing on voter election fraud. This one down in Georgia. The results may be certified, but will the GOP-controlled state legislature stand up and say not so fast? We're going to drill down on that. Plus, the president tweeting about the air quote Republican governor of Georgia, saying that he must immediately allow signature verification matches because if they do, Trump says, I'll win. And we're going in depth on today's show regarding voter fraud. 2 whistleblowers are going to be with us to give us details on what they saw. But first, we're going to bring you our interview with Pennsylvania State Senator Doug Mastriano. He's leading the charge in the Keystone State to try and get the GOP state legislature to declare the results of the vote in Pennsylvania in dispute. Here's our conversation from earlier today. Senator Mastriano, I really appreciate you joining me here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on in these strange times.
For sure. And you're right in the thick of all of these strange times. I want to kind of get the latest from the Pennsylvania legislature standpoint. What are you hearing? What do you think the road forward here is at this point? Because I know there's a concern that some of your Republican colleagues may not necessarily be on board with some of what you've been saying in the resolution that you've introduced there in Pennsylvania.
So obviously last week it was earth-changing as far as what happened in Gettysburg, changed the conversation, and even the media had to cover stuff even though they really didn't want to because, facts are stubborn things. And so, of course, myself and my colleagues in the House introduced a resolution saying we should, seize back our power of appointing electors, and we need to do an investigation on this election and find out what the heck happened. And so, obviously, there's a lot of discussions in caucus. The strange thing is every 2 years on the 30th of November, the General Assembly in Pennsylvania goes lame duck for a month. And so we're trying to get the governor to call us back in for a special session because our view is, regardless of Republican or Democrat, if any Pennsylvanian feels disenfranchised and has evidence, as we demonstrated last week, they should have a fair hearing, and we need to get it sorted out and fixed. But sadly, our governor, Tom Wolf, has a record of, when being given the opportunity to do the right thing, consistently chooses to do the wrong thing. So we're in an uphill slugfest. I hope we can prevail upon him, and the people of Pennsylvania hopefully should let their voices be heard to the governor that he needs to act.
What's your sense on timing of all of this? I mean, can the governor, when do you think the governor would decide or could decide or won't decide at all?
One thing that's really admirable about the Democrats is they're very strategic and they know how to run out the clock. Many of the changes to the election law that we had, of course, happened right before the election. So we're like at a loss. How do we fix it? It's too late. And so I think the governor is going to try to run out the clock unless he feels an extraordinary amount of pressure from the people of Pennsylvania. I think he's just going to try to just lay low and not say anything. So it's a struggle, and it's just too darn bad because I could care less. Someone who put his life on the line for my country, and I'm no hero, I served with heroes, but 30 years in uniform, I don't look at things through partisan lenses, although, the media might think that based off my words, but no, it's always what I view as the betterment of my country. And I would think and hope that the governor would have the best interests of Pennsylvania, since he took his oath on the Bible for the Pennsylvania Constitution, U.S. Constitution, to do the right thing. But I just don't see it, though, sadly.
Well, talk to me a little bit regarding partisanship. You mentioned, you try to stay away from that. The truth of the matter is there are some Republicans in the state legislature that just don't seem to necessarily be having the same vociferous dispute on this that you do. Like, for example, what's the deal with House Speaker Brian Cutler and some other folks? Where are they on all of this?
I would ask anyone who has, now look, let's have a debate. And that's one thing interesting about conservatives as well, because we all think independently. We don't get in line much like the left, like the Democrats. They line up and they march forward, with such unity. On our side here, I'll ask everyone not to rush to judgment, just as we didn't. And that's why I held a hearing last week. I was so frustrated that I'm hearing from people, literally tens of thousands of people are contacting me. Help me. I was disenfranchised. I was cheated. I saw this. And they weren't given a voice. So I'm like, forget it. I just need to hold a hearing to find out what the heck happened. Let the chips fall where they may. And it changed everything. Then Arizona followed suit and Michigan followed suit. That's fantastic. Let's just have the truth. Because as John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. Mm-hmm. So on the Republican side, to answer your question, David, is please just take a couple minutes and review the hearing. Listen to the eyewitnesses. It's very compelling and convincing. And they took all this they sworn affidavits. I have hundreds of pages of affidavits. I will give you a copy of it if you want to make your own decision. But it's very compelling. Something really went wrong in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And so just back to those Republicans real quick. So wouldn't it be important for more of those Republicans to step forward and kind of speak as one voice? It doesn't seem like it's happening as much as you'd like it to.
Yeah, we do need unity of effort. We did caucus yesterday on the Republican Senate side there, and there was, I would say, the majority of us know what to do and want to push forward and want action. The people of our state, have hired us on, have trusted us to represent them and be their voices. I represent, more than 250,000 people in Pennsylvania, including Gettysburg, and by God, I'm not going to stand aside. I'm gonna say truth, speak truth to power. I'm going to do all that I can here to have their voices be heard and to take a look at and remedy anything that's gone wrong in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. We've heard about the Great Depression in years gone by. I think what we're watching now is the Great Suppression by the media. I mean, you talk about affidavits that you can provide, and there's so many others that have all of this evidence-based information out there, and the media doesn't cover it at all. So what's your message to the media in terms of what you've seen?
And so my concluding remarks are a little bit, in their face, because I said, you're complicit. Why did I have to find these eyewitnesses? They've been in the public eye. Why did it take Senator Mastriano to bring them forth? I said, media, that's your job. And as a result, you're complicit in the breakdown and failure of our republic, because they have a powerful and important role to play in our republic, unless they're in the pocket of a party. And you see clearly they're in the pocket of the party. So instead of talking about my hearings, they want to talk about COVID. I mean, what a distraction. And they're all about red herring, ad hominem attacks. So if they can't distract you, they'll start calling you names. And so we need a new modern media, of which you represent, that's going to be the voice of the people. That's going to, hey, just the facts, ma'am. What happened, and you guys decide. And that's exactly what my hearing was about. And facts really did stir up things across the state, and they're having trouble hiding from the fact that something really went wrong in Pennsylvania, and they need to do their darn jobs to start reporting on it.
What did you make of Bill Barr's comments about widespread fraud, that he hasn't seen that? And the media seems to leave out the part "to date." In other words, so far, I haven't seen anything. But still, you're mentioning so much information. Michigan, Arizona, Georgia's a mess. Where is the DOJ exactly on this, Senator?
Yes, David, you got me. I listened to his remarks. I'm like, so what investigation, Attorney General Barr, are you referring to? Has your agency deep dived on Pennsylvania or Georgia or Michigan or Arizona or Nevada? So what exactly we're referring to? And of course, when he was asked for specificity the next day, he walked it back, of course. And the media doesn't want to talk about that, because like typical leftists, they're going to grab on whatever advances their agenda, their story. And I'm like, just stop doing that. Just report the facts. And it's important that in these times that try our souls, and there's so many questions, that we have intellectual curiosity and probing hard questions for both sides. And it's interesting to me that the media only wants to have intellectual curiosity and probing questions when it's against a conservative Republican or against President Trump. But when it's against Wolf or their party or Biden or the results that they think went for Biden, of course, suddenly like, oh, nothing to see here, get over it, time to get together. And I'm like thinking in 2000, Bush v. Gore, be patient, there's a process. And I'm like, today, be patient, there's a process, and Donald Trump has a right as an American to walk that process through the courts, just as we did with Bush v. Gore in 2000.
I'm wondering how you think all of this ends. Obviously, the chances, it's a long shot to say the least for this president to actually pull this off in the end. But how do you think all of this ends in Pennsylvania and nationwide?
Yeah, my hope is, may the guy who won fair and square win. And that's just the thing. Pennsylvania and the other states, of course, we'll be disappointed if our guy didn't win, but let whoever won fair and square stand up. And if this race was so corrupted as it looks like it was, we're going to need the U.S. Supreme Court to step in and make some hard decisions. the ultimate decision right now is in the hands of the U.S. Supreme Court. And so that's where all our eyes are going to right now. And it's going to be, a historic decision either way. But what I do know for sure is a lot of bad things happen in Pennsylvania. People need to go to jail. We need fair and free elections. David, if I can conclude with one thought, I served many times in Afghanistan. I supported the mission in the Balkans, also in the Baltics. And it amazes me that we'll move heaven and earth to ensure safe and free elections in foreign countries. We'll make sure there's ID cards, there's security, there's retinal scans, bio scans, one person, one legal vote. And we go to all these extents in Afghanistan that has a fairer, more free, more secure election than Pennsylvania. And we can't do that in our own state where it all started in 1776. Houston, we got a problem and we need to fix it.
Yeah. And by the way, those courts, the critics will say that the Trump campaign is losing in courts across the country, especially in Pennsylvania, where that Third Circuit judge ruled against them. There's been, and of course, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court over the weekend. What do you say to the courts, the judges that are ruling in these cases?
Some of the judges are good, reputable, men and women here. So I'm not going to bring castigation on any of them. It's the burden really is up to the Trump administration, David, to make their case, and it's going to have to be compelling. We do have a precedent in 1994 in Pennsylvania where there was a state Senate race. Marks versus Stinson. The Democrats cheated so bad to get their guy Stinson in office. Yeah. He was sworn in serving, and then the judge found out, thanks to Mark's law case, that the election was so corrupted that the federal district judge threw out the results, ordered the Democrat senator out of Harrisburg and put the loser Republican in because the results were so corrupted. Yeah. If the Trump administration can make a case that there was broad, systematic, extensive fraud, abuse, and cheating, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania has that precedent. But the burden is on the Trump administration to make that argument.
Senator Mastriano, really a pleasure. Thanks for being here on the Water Cooler.
Thank you. God bless you guys. Thanks for putting the word out there.
You bet. That is State Senator Doug Mastriano here on the Water Cooler. We're back in a moment with Phil Klein talking about what's going on in Georgia, Michigan, and other places.